A new day dawns on a new season as the World Center of Racing Daytona International Speedway plays host to the second season opener of the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series. Last season, a maximum of 16 drivers were in the field for one of the iRacing Superspeedway events. Today, 22 drivers get ready to take the green flag, and a new clean slate for drivers based off their performance last season. A lot of new drivers in the field, and one David Duran looking to be a back-to-back champion. I'm Seth Cole, being joined by Lucas Cram. And Lucas, after the offseason, the drivers are ready to go. The fans are ready to go. We're ready to go up here in the booth. Let's get ready to turn these guys loose.
Absolutely. Superspeedway racing is always a blast, and especially here at Daytona in the sunshine. David Duran, obviously, as you mentioned, coming in off that championship last season. We have a lot of new faces as well to join us for this season. 22 cars. It's going to be a really awesome race here. I just can't wait to get us started.
57 laps of racing here tonight at Daytona International Speedway. A lot of the same rules that we had last season applying this year. Some of the most notable, of course, the choose cone coming into play on restart should we need them. And of course, that double yellow line, while we see it visibly, it doesn't exist in this race. These drivers are allowed to go down and use the apron on the front straightaway, the back straightaway, if they're brave enough, even in the corners. Not likely to use it as much here at Daytona as they will in the other races at Talladega and iRacing Superspeedway, but you know when we get closer to the end of this race, that extra 2 or 3 lanes down there, it's going to be a couple of drivers that are going to be willing to make that risky move.
Yeah, for sure. You know, if you can clear somebody going into turn 3 and you kind of have that confidence, I'm sure you're going to probably see it at some point during the backstretch. But yeah, definitely going to try to save it towards the end of the race. It's obviously a really, really risky move, and you know, these guys hopefully get out a good start on the, good foot to start out here in the new season.
Take a look here at our starting lineup. We had 11 drivers take time down to body. Shane Terrian's going to line up on the outside of row 6. Jason Freeman, David Duran in row 7. Stephen Doziak Jr., Justin Duran, row 8. Row 9 is going to find Vincent Valvano and Mike Tellier. Garrett Gleason, Matthew Rodriguez going to complete the top 20. Then Austin Grover and Jason Shuey will roll off from the final 11th row. Mentioned a lot of new names in the field. 4 drivers making their TNR Superspeedway Series debut up inside of the top 5. Chapman, Sobel, Hesgard, and Bill Edwards. Robert Kenney, former winner from last season, is the only person from Season 1 that's making his return up here inside of the top 5 starting spots.
iRacing.com pace truck pulls onto the safety of pit road, and now for the second season in the TNR Superspeedway Series, Joey Chapman will lead the field to the green flag here for the first lap of number 57.
Matt Muir Designs 150 underway here. One driver is going to start out the season with a W. The Toyota of Joey Chapman will go to the point with help from Robert Kenney. Toyota had the victory in the season opener last season courtesy of Jason Gracias. They'd love to go for back-to-back victories. Outside line starting to form there. Somebody dropping to the back. That's all strategic. I believe that's David Durant, the defending champion, that's exiting towards the rear.
Yeah, that's exactly why he's the champion from the previous season. Nice and conservative here to start the season. No need to get yourself caught up in wreck here on lap number 1. And on the outside lane, surprisingly, this is really kind of falling apart. Josh Basola making his debut here in the TNR Super Series Series. He's kind of dropping it out. Now he's back down in line, single file with the rest of the field, and a big, about 8-car gap here to the outside lane. There's just nobody really up there at the current moment, but I'm sure we're going to see that shift here in a couple laps.
If you're new to the TNR Superspeedway Series point system, it's rather unorthodox, but it puts a lot of emphasis on running at the front and staying at the front. A lot of the max points are paid out to the drivers that finish up inside of the top 5. We've also got bonus points that are given out to the drivers that qualify on the pole, lead a lap, lead the most laps, but the big one that we saw play a big part into the outcome of the championship last season was the 10 bonus points paid out to the driver that improves their finishing position from their initial start position. So a lot of guys up there towards the top of the standings last season, like Matthew Rodriguez, Austin Grover, and the eventual champion David Duran, start towards the rear of the field, work up towards the front in the end, and pick up those 10 bonus points in multiple races.
Yeah, David Duran, a lot of the field actually did not qualify here, but less than half the field, I believe, if I'm counting right, actually decided to qualify. But obviously, the cars who don't qualify, the field gets all set by iRating. So David Duran, I'm assuming trying to search for those 10 bonus points. Unfortunately for him, he actually started in the 14th position still, even after skipping out and running the qualifying lap. So There's definitely a lot of competition he has today for that battle, but now battle for the race lead as Robert Kenney took the race lead there on the high side around Joey Chapman. Now has pressure from Casey Brunson on the outside.
Brunson trying to make that move work. We saw on board with Shane Tyrion trying to help push that 10 on the top side. Michael Norman there in the 21. Mike Tellier as well. A lot of former winners from last season in the field here tonight. Tellier, Valvano, Duran, Rodriguez, Robert Kenney, and Garrett Gleason.
See Shane Tyrion up there on the outside lane, number 88 Toyota, trying to push that driver out in front. We mentioned a lot during the course of last season as well, but one thing to note with these old Xfinity cars that the series uses here on the surface is that the bumpers don't line up quite as well as you'd expect, or at least on some other cars in the NASCAR ranks. And so you be really careful when you're bumping like he is right now down the back straight and into the corner of bumper hooking. It's very, very easy, even if you feel like you're centered up. If you just ever so slightly touch somebody too hard or really offset to the left or right, it's very easy to hook them in front of the entire field. And we saw that happen a lot in the late stages of last season. These guys make sure they're just very careful of that all race on here today.
Complete lap number 4, though we almost had our first caution of the day over there in 1 and 2 the last time by. Garrett Gleason a little too wide off the second corner, rushed the wall and had a difficult time getting off of it. A lot of momentum lost. Everybody gave him the room to gather it back up. Very slow down the back straightaway, and you lose momentum like that at a super speedway, it's going to take you anywhere from a full lap, maybe even a lap and a half, 2 laps to get all that momentum and all that speed back. The worst part of it for Garrett Gleason now, he's lost the pack, he's lost the draft, he's going to be all by his lonesome. He's hoping for a caution.
See up front here, Casey Brunson just got pushed out to the race lead in front of Robert Kenney, but surprisingly decided not to jump down in front of him, so maybe potentially working back there with Shane Tyrion, who's still glued to the rear bumper of that number 10 machine, and across the start finish, Robert Kenney continues to hold the race lead as we complete lap number 5. You see the field kind of getting a little scattered, a little more stacked up compared to what we've seen the first 5 laps. These guys, obviously, Daytona's a little more narrow than Talladega, but interested to see how long this stays before we end up seeing much true wide racing.
Got a pretty good breakaway from 15th place David Duran back to 16th Philip Scott. So about 15 drivers up in this lead pack, and then a bunch of stragglers, including Jason Shuey. Ryan Hescard has dropped back there. Bill Edwards. Hescard and Edwards started this race up inside of the top 5, now find themselves outside of the top 15, all in self-preservation, because these drivers do, much like last year, have a faster pair to fall back on, but you don't want to have to use that in the first 10 laps of this race. And we saw a couple of races last season where drivers had to take the faster pair on early, and we're kind of on pins and needles for the remainder of the race.
Yeah, as Bad just mentioned, our championship contenders last season, the last 2 races I remember pretty well. That was kind of the hot topic, was when those guys, if they got involved in an accident and if they had to use their faster pair. And a lot of guys like to try to save it all the way to the end of the race. I believe Mike Tellier there in that last Talladega race, he saved it all the way to the very end, took it, drove through the field, and then went in the race his first of the season. So as you see 3 wide out now for the race lead, Shane Tyrion going up the middle is now the 10 machines in the outside retaining wall. Luckily managed to stay onto it, but close call right there for sure.
A lot of damage you can see right there on the right side of Casey Brunson, who got forced up to the top 3 wide, and nobody went up there to help him. And as he started fading towards the back, up into the outside wall, kind of shades what we saw happen to Garrett Gleason a couple of laps ago, as Tyrion and Robert Kenney now going to be side by side for the race lead. And one thing we've seen here in the first couple laps of this race, both lines have been able to get enough numbers to stay pretty equal with each other. Nobody's been able to get out to a clear lead at this point in time.
Yeah, we had like 1 or 2 laps where they little nudge there for Michael Norman. As I mentioned, we had those 1 and 2 laps there that start or seemed pretty single file, but immediately, as I said, the lanes just all completely changed, and now the outside lane falling back a little bit here behind Matthew Rodriguez, who's now clear. Third car on the inside lane. He's going to jump up to that outside lane and try to carry that momentum as the challenge to the race lead. But yeah, very racy. We saw this all last season as well. These guys absolutely can get a huge pack, a huge line, working with some momentum. Robert Kenney already thrown a block here, lap number 9. There's a shot there from the back bumper of Matthew Rodriguez, and now he's going to jump back down into the inside in front of Joey Chapman and control the race lead.
Stacked up that outside line just the least little bit. Michael Norman back there in the middle of the pack, I think had to bail out of the throttle. That moved him to the outside line. Now he's going to fade towards the back of this lead group. Robert Kenney, former winner from Talladega last season. Two drivers in the field here tonight were multi-time winners last season. That, of course, was Matthew Rodriguez and our defending champion, David Duran. Ironic that both of those drivers are racing injured here tonight. Matthew Rodriguez with a leg injury and David Duran with a fractured hand. I mean, a lot of people may not realize that some of these guys tough it out with physical injuries and continue to race on a weekly basis. That's two of those guys that are currently up here trying to see if they can pick up, for each one of them, their third career win in this TNR Superspeedway series.
Matthew Rodriguez carried that over to the race lead, but now he gets hung up to dry on the outside lane with the number 88 of Shane Turian as he jumps down to the race lead in front of Robert Kenney. But yeah, you mentioned those injuries, and racing with injuries like that, it definitely makes it a lot easier to be on sim racing without having the actual G-forces or anything to kind of injure yourself that you would have in real life racing. But it definitely is no easy task. As the 88 got turned sideways right there for the race lead. We're getting a little intense here on lap 10.
Look at the Camrys up here. They've swept the top 5 at this point in time. Turian Rodriguez, Kenney Tellier, and pole sitter Joey Chapman. Got a car in the apron there in the tri-oval. That's still in body going to the back, and that's one of the more sketchier areas of trying to fade towards the rear of the field. Not nearly as much banking to be able to utilize there through the tri-oval. A lot of times the car wants to push up back onto the racing surface. That's why we see most drivers bail out on the back straightaway, a little bit more of an even transition from the back straightaway to the apron. So nice job there by Dylan Body to not go back up into traffic and make his way back to a safe position where he wanted to be.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a little unorthodox. And the biggest thing about the tri-oval there is that the apron's barely wide enough for a car length. Most of the apron down the backstretch in the corners is a lot longer, but for some reason the tri-oval, with that tri-oval grass down there, it's barely wide enough for a car length. So it's definitely really sketchy. Luckily, they were able to make it out of that okay. As on the 44 is being warned for connection issues. Drove up inside the top 10, unfortunately having some connection issues there in that 44 machine. But still, for the race lead, Shane Turian did a nice job here down the inside. Matthew Rodriguez trying to get a push from Mike Tellier, his teammate up there on the outside lane, and try to get 10 for the race lead. And now as the fight off turn number 2, looks like the inside still has momentum in the backstretch.
Much like last season, these Xfinity cars able to hook bumpers and tandem. That's why we see the big runs taking place on the outside line with Matthew Rodriguez and Mike Tellier trying to get to the right rear quarter panel of Robert Kenney, who's looked to the back bumper of Shane Turian. Then he got another two-car tandem forming on the inside line. That's the Toyota of Joey Chapman. He's got Alonso Chicano there on his back bumper, and incredibly enough, Alonso Chicano was a driver that was very dominant last season, spent a lot of time up in front, but was never able to find victory lanes. So you look at someone like him, the championship runner-up in Austin Grover, drivers that did not find victory lane last season, you gotta know they're chomping at the bit this year to find victory lane in season 2.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really surprising, obviously, those guys never were able to find their way into victory lane, as you mentioned, just running up front every single week consistently, and unfortunately just have not had things go their way to, seal the deal off and get across the start finish line first. As now you see Matthew Rodriguez, multi-time winner from last season, as we also mentioned earlier, jumps down in front of number 88 and will take over the race lead. And now Mike Tellier on the outside lane, who I mentioned earlier, is able to get that win at Talladega and break through that win column. He's going to actually take the race lead here across the start finish line and lead that lap. But yeah, definitely a lot of big names that we saw last season, I'm sure, are probably going to find their way to victory lane this season. It's a matter of time.
Really interesting. Last couple of drivers we've seen lead that outside line. As soon as they get clear, they look back at the car that pushed them, say thank you for your service, and then bail out and move down to the inside line. I thought Mike Tellier might get clear there, but he's going to actually drop back alongside of Shane Turian for second now. Chicano trying to push the 97 on that top line, and there you saw the slower machine of Garrett Gleason still. Oh, Mike Tellier gets hooked into Rodriguez. Big wreck in the middle of 3 and 4.
Cars still piling up in the middle of 3 and 4. Alonso Chicano, unfortunately, Mike Tellier of the 6 machine. We saw a drop out earlier in the tri-oval. He's also involved. Huge crash in the middle of 3 and 4.
Chapman, the pole sitter, is in it. The defending champion, David Duran, I think, was swept up in it. Chicano in the 95, Dylan Body in the 6, Jason Freeman in the 20. I think that's going to take a lot of replays to get the full extent of who was involved. There is the 56 of Joshua Sobel. That car, I think the front tires are all locked up there with the damage on the front end. He's having a difficult time even crab walking that machine back to pit road. I saw Michael Norman with damage on the 21, Justin Durand in the 29. might be easier to name off the drivers that weren't involved than the drivers that were, because that started right up at the front of the field.
Yeah, I was about to mention like Casey Brunson, a lot of cars involved in that one. Basically, all but a few of the race leaders were all pretty much piled up down there in turns 3 and 4. And unfortunately, that's exactly what I was talking about just early in the race. Alonso Chicano, pushing Mike Tellier into the corner, just trying to keep the momentum up. Obviously, doesn't want to turn sideways whatsoever. And unfortunately for Mike Tellier, just barely gets him turned sideways enough to get down into the inside lane and hook the race leader, Matthew Rodriguez. And luckily for Rodriguez, he was able to hang onto it and keep it out of the outside retaining wall. But unfortunately for the rest of the field behind them, they weren't quite as lucky.
Christopher Tate in the 44 got a piece of it. Philip Scott in the 99 with a little piece. I also saw the 55 of Stephen Doziak Jr. in the middle of it. I mean, I'm counting right now about maybe 3 or 4 drivers that were in front of the wreck and maybe a maximum of 2 drivers that might have been able to come to a stop and avoid the wreck with drivers spinning back down the racetrack. So 15, now 16 laps in, we were talking about this, the fear for drivers of early on in this race having to take on a faster pair, and for some of them, that's going to be the case.
Yeah, nice miss there by Vince Valvano. He was in the 10th position down there on the inside, and luckily for him, just kind of shot down the inside, got as low as he could on the racing surface, kind of half on the apron, and barely managed to squeak by that incident as everybody else just kind of wrecked around him, including Joey Chapman, who got clipped in front of him and eventually spun around. So, yeah, about 5 cars, I believe, as I mentioned, maybe a touch more in the back that managed to get through that unscathed, but definitely a wild incident here pretty early on in this event.
Like the 9 car was able to come to a stop there and drive on through. I believe there was a little contact on the 50 of Bill Edwards. Casey Brunson, who spent a couple of laps out in front, was collected up in this one. And looking to see right now the number of drivers that are at this point taking on a faster pair. Looks like it would include Joshua Sobel, Mike Tellier, Michael Norman, Dylan Body, and Alonso Chicano. So the rest of them just dealing with the damage they've got at this point, trying to preserve that faster pair for later on in the race.
Yeah, definitely quite a few still out there with some minor damage, and looks like Matthew Rodriguez took some of those option repairs on his rear quarter panel. Mentioned he was able to save that car, but did get quite a bit of severe damage in that rear quarter panel. So he got his optional repairs fixed, so he still has faster pair in the bank. Luckily for him, and yeah, a lot of the guys here really involved, and this will be interesting to follow. The rest of the event still a long ways to go, 40 laps to go, and they come back around for the restart here as we get the 1 to grow signal. And 40 laps to go at Daytona is a long ways without anything left in the bank to try to save you if you get involved in another incident.
That's going to be interesting to see here as well with all the drivers that were involved. Which drivers are still going to be up to speed? Which drivers are going to be off the pace? Because it was kind of a wait and see in last season when a driver would get what looked like extensive damage to see if indeed it was just visual or if it really was going to affect their speed, because some drivers that looked like they shouldn't be keeping up with the rest of the pack, they were able to push or even work their way up to the race lead. Other drivers that looked like it was minimal contact, they were fading back and losing a lot of straightaway speed. So we'll have to see the end result on a lot of those drivers caught up in this incident, if they're basically going to just be riding it out here to preserve that faster pair for later on, or if, with the damage that they have, if they're still actually going to be competitive at this point in time.
Yeah, we definitely have seen a lot of these cars can get pretty heavily damaged for the most part, I would say. You know, as far as a plate track and how much aero matters around this 2.5 mile super speedway, it definitely is pretty surprising to see some of the cars we've seen run up front consistently, even with that damage. So a lot of these guys, I'm assuming, are just trying to take as much option repairs as they possibly can, and then as you mentioned, just kind of see how their damage is and try to save that fast pair on the bank until later in the event.
Robert Kenney going to lead us back to green. Casey Brunson alongside. Shane Tiering, Austin Grover, Michael Norman, and Vincent Valvano. They're going to make up the first 3 rows. Everybody else staggers on the inside line with the choose cone rule. So it's going to be single file from about 7th place on back. Don't worry, they'll get bunched up by the time we get over here to 3 and 4, double and 3 wide again, depending on who's got damage and who doesn't. But the top 2 going to get single file. Shane Tiering on the back bumper of Robert Kenney. They're going to try to put some distance on 3rd place on back here down the back straightaway.
Casey Brunson restarted for that 2nd position up there on the outside. He manages to slide down in line in front of Vincent Valvano and hold on to the 4th position as the entire field here up front kind of just run out single file at the moment. And a lot of these guys, I'm assuming, at least towards the back, are you're going to try to take a little easy, per se, as far as the standards of this series goes, at least, just maybe not get themselves too close to danger and get involved in another incident they can't exactly come back from. So Matthew Rodriguez, one of those guys, still the fastest from the bank. He's trying to make a move up to the front, but unfortunately just can't really get much help from the 6th car behind him. And now Vince Valvano looking outside, and now Michael Norman, actually, he got involved in the incident, does not have the fast car. He's going to get up here and try to push the number 7, Camry up here to the front.
It's going to be interesting to watch some of these guys like Michael Norman, like Dylan Body, see how aggressive they're going to be for the remainder of this race. To your point, they've already used their faster pairs, so still a long ways to go in this one. If they get involved in another incident, especially a big violent hit, their day is done. Their season opener comes to a very early end, so Norman jumping up there with Rodriguez, Body to the inside of Rodriguez, some hard racing around the 7th position, and now Body hard into the wall off of turn number 4. He's going to keep it up there. Everyone's going to give him room to recover, but that's a lot more damage on a car that's already a faster pair in the hole.
And yeah, he did a really nice shot queuing up out of the way for everybody else, and that could have been a lot bigger incident, but unfortunately, it looks like he was just trying to make a move up out of the corner in front of Matthew Rodriguez there to get it in front of him and run the high side, and must have been looking in his mirror, trying to look at the phone behind him, and unfortunately just ran out of racetrack up there. But big save. That definitely could have been a lot worse. But now single file is still all the way up to the top 5 in the field as now. Matthew Rodriguez, even without help, the number 57 machine, needed to try to make a move up here and get to the front.
The golden glare of the sun beating on the banking of 3 and 4 as it's beginning to set behind the hills here in Florida. But take a look at the weather conditions these drivers are dealing with. Track temperature of about 80 degrees. And would that have anything to do with a couple of drivers already? Garrett Gleason, we just saw there, Dylan Body. I think another driver ended up going up into the wall as well, up on that outside line. It was Casey Brunson back during that first run. It kind of seems like there's a cushion if you overstep it just enough on that outside line. That outside safer barrier is there to greet you.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty difficult. I will say, running around Daytona here during the sunset, that sun kind of gleams right off the racetrack, and it can make it really difficult, especially just to hold your line with the reflection, not necessarily blinding you, but kind of not exactly having any markers on the racetrack. There's no seam. It's kind of hard to see the white line as far as what line to run. Is Matthew Rodriguez now 3 wide, looking for the race lead on the top side as the number 80 gets a push from Vince Valvano, and he'll do that lap in front of Robert Kenney. But definitely could be pretty easy, just kind of losing track of where you are, and especially if you're looking in your mirror, as I assume the 6th car was there off turn number 4, it's pretty easy to kind of just catch the wall here.
Close there for Rodriguez. Tried to tuck in behind Valvano, wasn't clear. Now he'll get behind the 38 as Robert Kenney jumps up to the outside line, leaving Shane Thierry and Austin Grover by themselves.
Oh.
Here comes Casey Brunson, 3rd car on the inside line, and Kenney with a big block on the 88. Robert Kenney, as soon as he gets to the front, it's like he channels his inner Dale Jr. He makes sure he controls which line's going to get the run.
Yeah, he's making sure he just tries to control this entire race for as long as he can, as soon as he gets up there to the front. But a huge quartering up there on the outside, just where I was kind of surprised by. Looks like a lot of those guys about got turned around. Luckily, they all managed to gather back up and keep going straight. And you see some damage just now appearing on the 57 machine. Matthew Rodriguez behind Vince Valvano in that 38. But definitely showing his hand as far as how aggressive he'll be if we enter this event up there with Robert Kenney.
During the course of last season's schedule, Daytona was visited a total of 4 times. Different versions on those 4 separate occasions, but 3 of the former Daytona winners are in the field here tonight. Matthew Rodriguez, Garrett Gleason, and David Duran. In terms of this version, though, as mentioned, it was Jason Gracias, the only former Daytona winner who is not in the field here tonight. So we will have a different winner at this version of Daytona here in Season 2.
And so Valvano now with a push from the 57 machine, looking for the race lead. And all of those guys we saw last season, he went to victory lane, looking to try to get another one on the record for him here tonight. And doing a nice job. Saw him doing a nice job towards the end of the season as well, I believe. If I remember correctly, one of those guys who was up front at the end of the Daytona season finale just a handful of weeks ago, and unfortunately got cleaned up in that last lap accident. But now the 88 is going to jump up in front of him, get a push to the race lead, and now he'll jump down in front of the 34, Robert Kenney, heading into turn number 3.
Terrian, if I recall correctly, finished runner-up in the first iRacing Superspeedway event. Came up just short of David Duran for that victory. So he's been in the conversation, and what a save there by Robert Kenney. I don't know if he got a bad bump from Valvano, if he tried crossing the inside and the back end of the car wanted to come around, but Shane Terrian's going to pay the price because he gets put in the sucker hole 3 wide.
Yeah, it looked like Shane Terrian was kind of paying the favor back there. Robert Kenney kind of a little defensive blocking there, and Robert shot to the inside. I guess he wasn't really expecting that, and Vince Valvano then went around the outside and went around the 88 machine as well on the top. So definitely a little aggressive racing so far here, not even halfway through the event, but now it's the 38 versus the 34 drag race on the back straightaway.
A lot to play for here tonight to start out the season with a win, set the tone maybe for the remainder of the year, and try and win the championship by the end. There was 9 races on the schedule last season, only 7 races this season, but a lot of different events taking place during the course of these 7 races also. We've got a double header coming up in races 3 and 4 at Talladega. We've got a Dash for Cash race that's going to be taking place on December 12th at iRacing Superspeedway, so a lot of cool stuff here for these drivers to compete for, and I'll tell you what, if what we're seeing here in the season opener, where really all that's on the line is the first checkered flag of season 2, just wait till we get to those type of races.
Yeah, most definitely. And you mentioned that the condensed schedule of only 7 races. I believe that's probably paying a little bit into what we're seeing currently during this event. As you mentioned, the intensity is really ramped up, and the shorter condensed schedule kind of makes it more, I guess, nerve-wracking for these guys. You know, a little more nervous to try to get up there, get as many points as possible, and try to get yourself a win anywhere you can. Is now 3 wide through the field, 4 wide even.
Oh no!
It's gonna work.
Austin Grover, Casey Brunson through the grass. I don't know if the caution is going to come out. It should. I believe that would classify as a multi-car incident, which would warrant a yellow flag. We'll see what the case is going to be here, because I'm not certain if either driver went completely around. At this point in time, we stay under the green flag, but there's just no way you can make 4 wide work, especially going through the triangle. That's one of the most congested areas of this track.
Yeah, that was a really, really aggressive move here for only being lap number 26. Vince Valvano, you know, in his defense, there was a very big gap right there. I'm just not entirely sure if he was aware that Matthew Rodriguez was still up there on the outside of the 83 as well, but unfortunately just made some contact with the left rear of Austin Grover, a runner-up last season in the points. And as you mentioned, unfortunately for both of them, luckily they managed to save it first and foremost and not getting more contact with the inside wall. But unfortunately for them, they've both lost the draft without the caution flag coming out. Now they're going to have to come from behind here in this event as well.
And there's now a couple more drivers that would like to see a caution come out. A couple other drivers that would fit that bill would include David Duran, Dylan Body, who we saw get in the wall. They've lost the lead pack, Jason Freeman, and I keep seeing down this back straightaway when the field's exiting out of turn 2, entering into turn 3, I think it's the bright yellow 55 of Steven Dosiak Jr. So he and Freeman, they are a couple laps away from being put a lap down to the race leaders. So there's about a good half dozen drivers right now that would love to see the yellow flag come out right now and save their race.
Christopher Tate up here somehow having some connection issues earlier after coming through the field, and kind of had to go to the back of the field. He's now up here on the outside lane as he actually gets put 3 wide in the middle now by the number 56. But currently just trying to stay up here in the top 5 in his debut here in the TNR Superspeedway Series, and put in a good showing so far as long as his internet connection holds up.
Tate and Joshua Sobel in that 3 wide situation took on their faster pair and our only caution of the day. And it's interesting because you watch some drivers that'll just hang at the back and try and preserve their faster pair or preserve their race car if they have used the faster pair. In the case of guys like Tate and Sobel, they find themselves up in this lead group, and you might be thinking, well, why would they make a 3 wide move if they're already a faster pair behind? Well, the reason is, as mentioned, these cars, when they're hooked up, they generate such a run. So you've got to take that momentum somewhere, or else you're going to be in the back of the car in front of you.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously Daytona seems pretty narrow compared to Talladega, or even the head of the series as the Ironson Superspeedway. But you know, it's a plate race. There's a lot of room to kind of maneuver and get a huge run. You want to carry that, and obviously you don't want to lift at any point in time and just keep that momentum up. You just see a little stack up there on the inside lane for number 88 of Shane Terrian, and now Robert Kenney reassumes the race lead with Matthew Rodriguez up on the outside of the push of the number 44. And, you know, as we get closer and closer to these lap cars up here, it's interesting to see where these two decide as they currently run around the inside yellow line.
Jason Jason Freeman in the 20 and Steven Doziak Jr. in the 55, and they are less than half a straightaway ahead of the leaders. This lead pack, they're running about 190 miles per hour. That two-car tandem, they're 10 miles per hour off the pace, topping at 181 going into turn 1, so they're going to get swallowed up in a hurry. More than likely they'll be on the back straightaway here, which is probably a good thing both for the cars about to be lapped and these race leaders, because if it's in the corner, there might be a couple of guys that might take it 3 wide and may even force the issue 4 wide.
Yeah, most definitely. Luckily for them as well, the pack is kind of separated just a little bit as far as what we saw earlier after that contact, and so now and kind of just jump down there on the inside and hopefully pick up this lead draft and kind of stay within the pack. Obviously, Jason Freeman, he's got a clean number 20 machine right there with the 55, has pretty heavy nose damage. And so obviously they're just trying to look to stay in this lead draft and hopefully either through pit stops or through lucky dog position just catch a caution fly and get themselves back in the lead lap here.
We saw Vincent Valvano and Joey Chapman stay on the top side after getting around those slower machines, and they had a good run through the tri-oval, but Valvano could not hold his line. He drifted up, and Chapman could not keep the bumpers locked up, so they're going to lose touch with Kenney and Tyrion, who I thought for a moment might drop back into the 3rd and 4th position by the time we got to turn 1, but the momentum wasn't there on the high side by the time they got out of the tri-oval, and so the 34 and 88, they will stay 1st and 2nd. Chapman now slots into 3rd place, and Joey Chapman trying to see if he can get as many points as he can here tonight in terms of the fact that he started on pole. He'd love to start first, finish first, but that's tough to do in a super speedway. And some contact back there. Matthew Rodriguez and the lap machine of Steven Doziak Jr. That was very nearly a wreck.
As Bob mentioned, these two lap cars, you stay down the inside and kind of picked up this lead draft. They've kind of became a wedge between the 4th place of Christopher Tate and the number 44 machine. Matthew Rodriguez back there in the 5th place, and now they're kind of just holding everybody up at the moment, and it's difficult to get a run around the outside with a lot of these guys kind of just taking it easy, not wanting to push too hard and keep their nose clean if they get involved in that first incident. So now Matthew Rodriguez, he actually gets held out to dry by his teammate Mike Tellier. Now he's going to fall back here, probably back to about the 8th position.
Tellier as well as the 56 of Joshua Sobel. Now Rodriguez going to tuck in behind the 56. Behind them, Vincent Valvano battle with Michael Norman, and we got pit stops. How about this? Driving to pit road, Mike Tellier in the 97. I believe Bill Edwards also jumping down there, and Ryan Hesgard. We saw for the first time last season, the season finale, green flag pit stops. We're getting to see a round of green flag pit stops here in the season opener of season 2.
Yeah, they're pretty early. Remember that caution flag came out around lap 15, I believe, there, if I remember correctly. And so pretty early, these 3 cars decided to come down pit road. Bill Edwards actually taking it as an opportunity to take his fast repair as he just burned right there during that pit stop. And so obviously a very communicated pit stop between these 3 cars. And that is the thing about plate racing, the pit stop strategy. In most tracks, you don't want to pit until you absolutely have to because you will go a lot down. But on these plate tracks, as long as you have a group of cars together you can pit with and kind of be organized, you obviously don't stay a lap down, and you can actually kind of shortcut the rest of the field when they have to pit, and especially if a caution comes out, that actually puts you in a better spot. It's now 3 wide for the race. See, Matthew Rodriguez tags the outside retaining wall trying to get around Robert Kenney, and he'll get hung out dry on the outside lane 3 wide, but obviously these guys, if there's a wreck and there's a caution, those 3 cars who just pit can leapfrog everybody else when they come down pit road under caution. So it's good to turn out pretty big for them.
You saw those 3, Mike Tellier, Bill Edwards, and Ryan Hesgard going into turn 3 there in that camera shot. Mike Tellier with a pit road mistake, overshot his box, had to back it up, but they all are going to leave together, which was very important for preserving all 3 of their chances of staying on the lead lap. And that says to me the window's open, that these guys can make it the rest of the way from this point on, and you got to wonder if that's going to force the hand of all the rest of these drivers in this lead pack, if they're going to be drawn to pit road in the next 5 to 10 laps, or will they wait until that fuel tank is practically empty before they dive for pit lane?
Yeah, obviously the guys who are kind of in communication with each other and in different team chats, I'm sure they can try to communicate with each other to come down here together and do exactly what those 3 cars just did. But for anybody who's not, they want to wait until everybody else comes down and try to follow their lead and just stay in the pack. Because if obviously Daytona, if you pit by yourself, it's basically just a death sentence. You don't have any help, any draft around this 2.5 mile super speedway. You're basically done for. So obviously these guys are going to make sure they're a nice organized group of cars. And now you see Three cars up there in front of them, three more lap cars. David Duran, our past champion, with a ton of nose damage. The number 24 machine. Garrett Gleason, some damage as well, and David Batty right behind him. And so once again, those two lap cars who stayed down the inside. These three lap cars sit down here on the inside. That could definitely affect pit stops too, kind of blocking out everybody from being able to get down to the inside lane.
Former Daytona winner Garrett Gleason, also a former winner, and the defending champion David Duran. These guys in trouble. Duran not getting the season started here in Season 2 as he did in Season 1, and this is going to really break up the drivers behind them. Kenney jumps to the top side with Rodriguez. Tarian pinned on the bottom with Chapman, and they are in the wrong lane as they get pinned behind the slower machines. Top side going to swing around. Kenney to the lead. Rodriguez to second. Sobel moves to third.
Yeah, there's just a lot of patience right there at Tarian, and just making sure he doesn't, try to jump the middle lane, and probably could have aggressively made his move up there to the middle, but does not want to get involved in another incident or cause one for that matter, especially those cars who are already short put this group. So very smart, just very patient, shown right there by the 88 machine. Now he'll try to get around the outside of the 24 David Duran and get back in this lead pack. And now once again 2x2 flip the race lead. Looks like the 56 machine of Sobel gets pushed out with Michael Norman, and he's going to try to lead the field in turn number 3.
There's still 19 and a half laps to go, so I'm obviously maybe saying this a little too soon. But so far here tonight, these guys have done a tremendous job of racing hard but racing clean. We have only had one caution flag during the course of these 38 now complete laps. Last season's season opener saw a smaller field and the caution waved 6 times. Bear in mind, though, last season's race went into overtime as well. We ran 63 laps, a total of 6 laps over the 57 scheduled. So there's still the chance we could see a race like this go into overtime late in this race.
Oh, absolutely. But, a good thing to point out, though, compared to last season, this is the second season. So just having an extra season, a very aggressive move right there as it went down the apron. Michael Norman dropping out, looks like right there. But, just having that extra season of experience racing these guys. Obviously mentioned a few new faces that are in for this season. But everybody else in this series raced each other each and every single week for 9 weeks last season. So that goes a huge, super long way. And just, knowing how to race around each other and knowing what moves, are in etiquette and what's kind of out there a little aggressive. So these guys obviously know exactly what they're doing. The more and more they race each other, the more and more experience they gain, especially with these new guys who joined into this season. It makes it just all that more aggressive and all that cleaner all at the same time.
Keep an eye on the race within the race going on in this lead pack. Robert Kenney trying to hold off Shane Tarian, but you've got about 3 or 4 drivers in this league pack that are all battling for the lucky dog should we get a caution. Right now, Jason Freeman holds that position over David Duran and Steven Doziak Jr. Freeman, I believe, is that 6th car on the inside line. Duran with the front end damage is about 3-4 cars behind him. So right now, Freeman, should a yellow flag come out, would be in the lucky dog position.
And you still see that outside lane kind of just not quite formed up, and that tells me either of these guys are just looking at it a little bit conservatively, just trying to say they're fast prepared, wait until pit stops, or they're planning to make pit stops here very shortly, because obviously when you're trying to head down pit road, you don't want to pit from the outside lane, even if there's cars below you pitting. So these guys try and get single filing out a little more organized before they head down pit road here. And with just 15 laps to go, this pit stop can really change a lot. If you have a big mess up, if you speed down pit road, it could potentially kind of cost you a chance at the race win. So obviously these guys know the pressure of that, and it's going to be really interesting to follow how these guys all decide to split up and head down the road.
Remember when we saw that trio of Hesgard, Tellier, and Edwards come down pit lane? That was with 25 laps to go. Rodriguez and company, they're about to come around here and complete their 25th lap on this stint. So that says to me we are getting very close, maybe within 5 laps of these drivers absolutely having to come to pit lane for what potentially is going to be their final pit stop of the day.
Yeah, most definitely. You see this huge train back on the inside lane. Only 3 or 4 cars up here on the outside lane kind of formed up. Matthew Rodriguez and Joshua Solo both get clear of the race. So you're trying to bring Ronson Vivano actually back with them. This might be an organized move, trying to get everybody down to the inside lane. But interesting to note as well, for those 3 cars who headed down pit road earlier, as they come across the start-finish line right now, they're actually gaining a little bit, ever so slightly. It's not much, but only a few tenths here and there over the course of a lap. That can go a big way. They might actually just leapfrog all of this group of drivers up front, as they have a pretty big pack with lap cars included. And so they could definitely try to make sure that they just, continue to turn a lap single file as they're doing right now with about a 5-car train, and just continue to make up that time. And as soon as these guys head down pit road, they'll leapfrog and get to the race lead, which could be pretty huge if this for some reason stays green.
Yeah, those 3 drivers coming down pit road, when they did, was smart on 2 counts. Number 1, they all came down with enough drivers that coming out, 3 cars, going to be able to generate enough speed, nose to tail, to keep the lead pack at bay and be able to stay on the lead lap. The other thing that they avoided was the absolute traffic control mayhem that we're probably going to see when all 13 of these drivers elect to come down pit lane. Here we go. Who's going to have the braking zone? Who's going to not be aware of the other driver's braking zone? Hard on the brakes is the race leader, Matthew Rodriguez, as about 7 drivers, 8, 9 drivers now hit pit lane all in the same lap, but they did it. They all made it onto pit road. No incident.
Yeah, very impressive, especially for the first pit stops of the season and in a long while, honestly. Now these guys all head to their pit boxes, make sure nobody overshoots or even undershoots potentially into their pit box. Looks pretty clean all the way through the field as well. And so that was definitely a very clean pit entry, and it'll be interesting to see when they re-merge here exactly where they merge with that 5-car train we were just documenting as they come around and through the tri-oval. And so currently, it looks like as they get up to speed, it looks like off turn number 2 when the momentum is handed to them, it might be that 5-car train that prevails. Still the second group to pit as well as they work their way now on pit road.
Christopher Tate is now hitting pit lane, but this is not what you want to have happen to Superspeedway. Come down pit road under green flag conditions and not have anybody come down with you. So we'll keep tabs on him after his pit stop's completed as he comes down unofficially from the 3rd position. We're now waiting on Vincent Belvano and Jason Shuey in this lead pack to make their final pit stop of the day. And I'm looking down here at some of the drivers that we know had sustained some damage from our only caution of the evening, and a number of them still haven't taken that faster pair on. So that says to me, they don't necessarily think that we are out of the realm of a possibility of a caution between now and the checkered flag, because I would think if they thought that we were going green to the end, they'd have taken the faster pair on then and there.
Yeah, definitely. And a little surprised, honestly, about 10 laps to go here. And during a green flag run, you wouldn't want to take that fast spur to make sure you don't lose any more time. But interesting thing to note is everybody else kind of shuffles around. Jason Shuey and Vincent Valvano kind of tagged on that 3-car lap group we saw merge with the lead pack of Jason Freeman and the 55 machine of Steven Dozak Jr. and Garrett Gleason. They've kind of merged with them. And so I believe they might be bleeding a little more time currently, just kind of chilling up there. And unfortunately for them, even if they do catch a caution flag, they still have to head down pit road no matter what, and everybody else does not. So at the moment, they're kind of just losing more time, and hopefully for them, they can just kind of remerge with the draft. But at the moment, it looks like they might kind of fall behind everybody else.
Right now, it's kind of a I'll help you if you help me. They're able to run in the draft of these slower machines, helps them save some fuel to make it a couple of laps extra. At the same time, it puts Steven Dozak Jr. and Jason Freeman currently scored back on the lead lap. So if a caution were to come out, they'd be able to come around to the tail end of the lead, would not have to rely on the free pass should we get a caution.
And it's an interesting thing to note as well here. We're mentioning that 5-car pack and how that came out in front of the rest of that group of Robert Kenney, Matthew Rodriguez, and all those drivers. That 5-car pack actually has separated themselves from that second pack, with the rest of the field. And so now Austin Grover will head down pit road with Casey Brunson, but the rest of the field, trying to play catch up now to that 3-car pack, I guess, for the race lead.
That was a hot entrance into pit road for Austin Grover. So far, it does not look like any driver has been pegged by the speeding police, as most drivers that have come down pit lane have gone with the fuel-only strategy. We'll update there on the 83, see if indeed he is going to be able to come off pit road without a penalty. We've already seen the defending champion David Duran have some early issues, and boy, how ironic would it be if the season opener of the second year ends up taking out of contention not only the defending champion, but the first runner-up of the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series.
Yeah, definitely, and luckily for him, looks like he comes off pit road clean with Casey Brunson, who also looks like the number 10 machine burned his faster pair right there during that pit stop after unfortunately overshooting his pit box by a good bit and having to back up. So unfortunately for him, looks like he'll lose the draft from the 83 of Austin Grover, which obviously just hurts both of them. But at the current moment, they currently hold still onto the lead lap by a good bit without much drafting help. That would be interesting to document with 10 laps to go here if they hold on to that. But still a 3-car breakaway up here between Ryan Hesgard and Bill Edwards, and then Mike Tellier kind of tagged along to that group as well during that pit stop cycle. They currently have, I believe, it looks like about a 4-second gap over that second pack. And honestly, it looks like the second pack continuing to kind of shuffle around in positions. They're actually continuously gaining on that group, even with a lot less cars. And so with only 9 laps to go as they come across the start-finish line this time by, it's going to be interesting to see if they can somehow close up that 4-second gap in that short period of time.
They are definitely closing for sure, but they're not closing by as much as I would have thought. You've got about 6-7 cars in this group, led by Shane Terrian. They've only been able in the span of 2 laps to close it up from 4 seconds to now about 3.7 seconds. So you would think that they would gain a lot more than that with how many machines they've got in this pack. The trio, well, actually, it's not, well, it is a trio now. They had a couple of cars with them with Grover and Brunson a couple of laps ago as well, which was helping them out. But these 3 cars seem to be generating as much, if maybe just a little less speed than that group of 6 or 7, which is really surprising. So I think that with the number of laps left, 8 now on the board left to go, unless we get ourselves a caution, I don't think that second pack has got enough time to reel them in.
Contact! Michael Norman around!
There's the caution.
Big contact right there. Is there a lap of the number 6 machine there? Looked like he was going to stay high up out of the way of that second group, and unfortunately, not really sure which lane he was deciding to choose. Kind of jump back down the inside right in front of the race, the second pack, I should say, and caused a huge contact between himself, Michael Norman, 56 as well. Joshua Sobel got turned around. Luckily for him, was able to hang on to it. But yeah, just big contact right there. That was a really weird incident, to say the least.
That was the caution that Hesgard, Edwards, and Tellier did not want to see, because that brings 4th place on back right to their zip code for an upcoming restart with what will be less than 10 to go. Let's go back and take a look again. I believe that another driver might have gotten a piece of this with the 99 of Philip Scott. And to your point, just catching a car that was so much more off the pace, and everybody trying to figure out where do we go to split this machine.
Yeah, it looked like he was going to stay up high, and so the number 88 machine, the Shane Terrian, went down to the inside next to the yellow line, and then as soon as he got to the rear bumper of the number 6 machine, he kind of cut low, and then during the middle of that process, somebody kind of darted each way, just trying to avoid him, and unfortunately, he drifted up across the racetrack, tagged at 56, and then down to Michael Norman, and caused a huge pileup right there in the second group. And so obviously, caution flag was definitely a huge help for them to gain those race leaders, but most of this field being cleaned out in this pack, it's really unfortunate.
All the drivers that didn't take their faster pair on that green flag pit stop, possibly expecting a caution flag to come out between then and the checkered flag. I think they get an A in prediction class, because now the question is, do they take the faster pair on under our second caution of the day? And pretty good damage there for one of the strongest cars of the evening, Robert Kenney in the 34. Michael Norman's been up in the top 10 most of this evening as well, so some pretty good machines sustaining some damage.
Yeah, Philip Scott, really hard hit right there. Is at number 21, coming back across the track, kind of T-bone the driver's side door right there. And unfortunately, I mentioned Joshua Sobel getting kind of turned sideways and hanging onto it. He came back across the track in the process of trying to save it, collected Robert Kenney, spun him around, and I'm not sure how exactly tore up the number 56 machine is. The right side looks pretty bad on that Ford Mustang as he comes down the pit road and into his pit box for assistance on that. But yeah, definitely a pretty large incident, honestly, all the way through that second group.
Looks like Jason Freeman was the recipient of the lucky dog under this caution. So 17 drivers will be on the lead lap of 21 running when we go back green. Looks like Dylan Body, who is involved in that incident, he is going to be the first retiree of the season. He'll finish 22nd place here tonight. And now it's going to be interesting to see here as well. We're going to have roughly 4 laps to go, I do believe, in regulation once we get the green flag back in the air. And it's going to be interesting now to see what alliances were formed during the course of this race. The choose cone rule, who picks which line? That's going to be, I think, the strategy call here of who might end up winning this race.
Yeah, most definitely. And obviously, those 3 cars up front were working together very, very well to manage, continuing to hold off that second group with only 3 cars up there. And the 2 cars are definitely teammates with each other, around the same logos. I'm sure they'll probably try to either decide both to choose the inside lane and kind of stay connected, or maybe one of them go up the outside lane and either control or just have one of them count down the restart where they can get back in line behind him. So definitely be a lot of team games here and trying to figure out where everybody wants to be positioning themselves to help out their entire group. And obviously these guys now in the second pack who got caught up with that caution flag on back, they're going to looking to try to pounce, just jump on the bit and see what they can get here in the very late stages.
Well, this happened a lot last season in the closing stages of races, and we're going to do it here tonight in the closing stages of this Daytona race. Going down the list, but we're going to name off the drivers that still have the faster pair intact. Assume that everybody else that isn't mentioned has taken on their faster pair either during that green flag pit stop or here under the second caution of the evening. So your race leader, Ryan Hesgard, still has his faster pair. Shane Tyrion, Justin Duran, Matthew Rodriguez, Jason Shuey, and Vincent Valvano, who will all be starting 8th through 13th. They've still got their faster pair, and the driver that just got the lucky dog there under this caution, Jason Freeman, still has his faster pair intact. Everybody else at this point in time is a faster pair in the hole. There's a couple of drivers that have sustained damage after taking on the faster pair here for what will be potentially the final 4 laps of this race. So this is going to get really interesting because, as mentioned as well, we've got those unlimited overtime attempts if we need them. So how many cars are going to be finishing this race? How many will end up on the towman's hook by time the checkered flag is waving?
And somebody who's extremely grateful right now is Casey Brunson, the number 10 machine. You mentioned just then with 4 laps to go how important that choose cone rule was going to be. He was in the 8th position, and for some reason, all of the top 7 drivers decided to stay down on the inside lane. He goes all the way from 8th position all the way up to 2nd, and is going to restart on the front row here on the outside. With just 4 laps to go, that is huge for the number 10 machine.
Hesgard, Brunson, the front row. Bill Edwards, Philip Scott in row 2. Mike Tellier, Joshua Sobel in row 3. Then Joey Chapman, the pole sitter. Shane Tyrion, Matthew Rodriguez, and Justin Duran. That's the top 10 as we go back green with 4 laps remaining in the Matt Muir Designs 150.
And unfortunately, not a great restart on the outside lane from Casey Brunson, as now those teammates down there, Ryan Hesgard, going to push from Bill Edwards and Mike Tellier. Big save out of Casey as Philip Scott tried to peek to the outside and then take it 3 wide up top there. Luckily for them, they managed to hang on to it with just 4 laps to go.
As Brunson starts fading back, Scott stuck on that outside line with the loss of momentum. He's going to fade outside of the top 10, maybe even the top 15. And now we see Jason Shuey, Shane Tyrion peering those left sides below the double yellow line. Remember, that does not exist. There is no double yellow line rule. And I think as we get close to the end of this race, you're going to see more and more drivers venturing down to that lane. Rodriguez was in the wall back there. Some contact with Christopher Tate. We keep him straight. We keep it green.
And up front, Jason Shuey, Joey Chapman, another contact. 88 machine goes around to the outside wall. More cars sliding through the grass. It looks like they all managed to hang on to it. And unfortunately, but a 3 or 4 car incident here with just 3 laps to go. Shane Tyrion, very heavy damage to the number 88 Toyota Camry. It looks like he's currently crab walking, trying to get back around to the pits.
We see the suspension on the 88. Jason Shuey in the 3. I believe that pole sitter Joey Chapman got a piece of it. I think he and Shuey were the 2 that made the contact through the tri-oval, and color me surprised that it was only about 3 or 4 drivers that got damage in that, because there were a lot of drivers stacked up double wide behind where that contact began.
Yeah, especially when the 88 machine kind of got turned around on the racetrack. When he bounced off the outside of retaining wall back down into race traffic, somehow Austin Grover and the 83 machine and other drivers around him managed to barely skate their way through that without making any contact. And yeah, that definitely could have been a much larger incident here very late in this race.
There was a little contact there with Justin Duran, the front end of his machine. That is a hard lick there for Shane Tyrion. He was one of the drivers that we listed that still had his faster pair intact, so that's the good news. The bad news is he's going to lose out in a bunch of track position. Jason Shuey also had a faster pair to be able to fall back on. On the flip side, though, the 81 of Joey Chapman did not have a faster pair still left, and we can actually see he's got some pretty extensive front-end damage on his GoPro Toyota, so he's going to have to deal with that for the remainder of this race. And I think, yep, it just went onto the board. We are heading into overtime for our first attempt at an overtime green-white checkered in the season opener.
Yeah, definitely called that one earlier. Heading into overtime here. Obviously, a relatively clean race. Usually, there's a lot of cars left at the end to fight amongst themselves, and unfortunately, just things get really wild. And you know, crashes happen. It's part of plate racing, and luckily for all those guys who decided to kind of stay up front there, choose the inside lane, for the most part, they all came out of it clean. The top three, of course, Ryan Hesgard leading that group of drivers, and Alonso Chicano, he shot down the inside. I thought for sure he was going to involve in that incident. He kind of shot through the grass there, was able to make it through with a bunch of drivers in behind him as well, kind of making the same evasive maneuver there. And all these guys definitely lucky, and they're going to have to probably make a few more of those misses to try to get themselves up in the victory lane here at the end of this one.
Steven Dosiak Jr., the recipient of the lucky dog under this yellow flag. He will be restarting in the 18th position. Next drivers in line, should we see a couple more cautions for the free pass? David Duran would be the next driver. He's the only car 1 lap down, and then Garrett Gleason is 2 laps down, the 20th position. Looks like one driver that will not make it to the conclusion of this race will be Michael Norman. He's been sitting on pit lane for the last 5 laps or so, trying to get damage repaired on his Hot Wheels Ford Mustang. Looks like he'll be finishing out the season opener in the 21st position. But at this point in time, only one driver officially out of this race. That was the aforementioned Dylan Body, who will be finishing 22nd place. And you mentioned about Chicano getting through that wreck. A number of drivers doing a good job getting through that wreck. And the top 10's kind of gotten a facelift now. The top 3 remain the same with Hesgard, Edwards, and Tellier. But you got Chicano and Chapman completing the top 5. Justin Durand is now up to 6th. Joshua Sobel in 7th. Valvano, Casey Brunson, and Austin Grover now complete the top 10. And a couple of those guys, in Brunson and Austin Grover, are drivers that we saw up into the outside wall, lose all that momentum, lose the lead pack, lose the draft, and find themselves a lap down early on in this race. Now they've got new life as they're both looking for the first win of their TNR Sunday Superspeedway's career.
As Betta mentioned, we were talking about earlier about these guys who are unfortunately not able to get to victory lane last season. Definitely be looking to try to, get a little revenge on that and get themselves victory lane here to start out season 2. And besides Mike Tellier, who's currently in the 3rd position, at least across the line they were scoring-wise, the entire top 7 drivers have never gone to victory lane in the TNR Super Speedway Series, including your race leader, Ryan Hesgard. So definitely be interesting to see how this follows through and which one of these guys can kind of punch their ticket in victory lane to start things off here.
I'm wondering, is the 2 potentially clutching? Because remember, he, along with 50 in the 97, came down pit lane around where we thought the window was to make it the rest of the way. I don't think they were banking on overtime green-white checkers, those extra laps, and I think these guys might be a little bit concerned on what they've got in the tank if we have multiple restarts.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. I didn't really think about that. And, as you mentioned, he dropped way back right there under caution when they got doubled up there across the start-finish line, so definitely looks like he's a little bit on edge, and obviously that kind of scares the rest of the field behind them into, figuring out if they're actually going to make it across the line without a car kind of running the gas in front of them. But Alonso Chicano choosing the outside lane now and restart on the outside position. Did not quite work for the last time for the car right behind him, right there of Casey Brunson. As the pace truck pulls off for the first of potential many green-white checkout attempts, Ryan Hesgard is now going to take over the race lead and get a good job as Alonso Chicano tries to get a good run on the outside and try to get a push here to try to get to the race lead.
Wow, Bill Edwards got a shove from Mike Tellier right up to the back bumper of Ryan Hesgard. Those 3 will try and hook up as Chicano with fellow Chevrolet Brunson tries to get the top line going. Shane Tyrion, I believe that was, no, correction, Austin Grover and Matthew Rodriguez looked like they were going to formulate an alliance there. Now it's going to be Kenney and Rodriguez hooking up nose to tail. They won't be afraid to take it 3 wide if they get a big run down the back straightaway.
Made contact right there in the middle of the field. Joey Chapman got turned sideways. He hangs onto it. Now Robert Kenney, as you mentioned, trying to look up the middle. It gets chopped off by the 10 machine. And now with that outside lane a little more formed up than the inside with only 3 cars, you might just see the run kind of shift into this outside lane as Alonso Chicano now gets a huge run off turn number 4, looking to the outside, trying to get the race lead as they come around the start-finish line. We will get 1 lap to go here. White flag in the air.
Ryan Hesgard started this race from 4th, faded to the back early, moved to the front after a green flag pit stop call. He's trying to pick up his first win on the season, first win of his career. Edwards trying to hold off Chicano, who's leading that outside line. Line him up even on the top and the bottom. Which line's going to get the advantage down the back straightaway?
Alonso Chicano got a huge run right there. Robert Kenney got a look at the middle turns. The number 10 machine of Casey. Now, unfortunately, for the number 95, he has no help there on the outside as the 2 teammates. Bill Edwards, well, he tried to make a move on his teammate Ryan Hesgard for the race win.
Oh, big wreck board wrecking back there through 3 and 4 as off turn number 4. It's going to be Ryan Hesgard, Bill Edwards, Chicano, and Kenney. It's Ryan Hesgard Hesgard. He'll get his first career win here tonight in the Matt Muir Designs 150 at Daytona.
Great teamwork right there behind him. Bill Edwards just kind of stayed tucked up in line, pushed him across the start-finish line to make sure he claimed that one. And unfortunately, just really has to feel for Alonso Chicano. We mentioned last season up front so many weeks and in contention to get the win and never could pull it off. Looked to be in a great spot right there, and unfortunately, the contact behind him, nothing of his own doing. Just loses all drafting help and all chance right there on the last lap, just half a lap away from a potential victory. But great finish right there, as always, and a great win there. Brian Hesgard getting his first career win.
No, Lucas, our broadcast colleague Scott Rankin tells me to put away my crystal ball all the time, but I'll make a little prediction here. Last season opener, Jason Gracias won the first race in the number 1. Season 2, race 1 is the number 2 of Ryan Hesgard going to victory lane. If a third season comes around, I think Jason Shuey is a shoe-in to get that victory.
I like your pun there as well. But yeah, definitely numerology is coming into play here at the season openers.
Ryan Hesgard gonna burn it down here in the infield grass at Daytona. Fuel was a bit of a concern for him there on that final restart, but he had enough Sunoco to get to the start-finish line. It's a 1-2 finish for himself and Bill Edwards, who make their debuts here tonight. Chicano, Kenney, and Valvano gonna complete the top 5, but we'll show the finishing results in just a moment. Let's go back and take a look at all the action that took place on that final lap, because we had a wreck on the back straightaway, and then an even bigger wreck when we got to the center of 3 and 4.
Yeah, similar to last time we were here at Daytona under the lights just a handful of weeks ago in the season finale of season number 1. Pretty much the entire field behind the top 3 got involved in a huge incident there, and it looked like, looking back to the replay here, it looks like Jason Freeman just kind of got up on the outside retaining wall after getting that lucky dog, trying to get around that incident on the backstretch just before then, and kind of made some contact with the number 9 machine, and everybody kind of just got stacked up in a huge chain reaction of things. And luckily for the number 9 and the 88, they both managed to come out of it unscathed, but for the rest of the field behind them, besides Christopher Tate, who had a heck of a miss right there, coming through, come across the start-finish line 17th, they got a big incident right there.
Hit from Matthew Rodriguez, Joey Chapman. 2 cars flipping over, about 4 or 5 drivers catching some air. There's Doziak Jr., Philip Scott, Rodriguez. Almost, well, yes, he is going to end this race on his roof. It did not flip back over for him, so he finishes in 18th. Oh, there's Chapman helping to get him back onto his wheels. Mike Tellier comes in to offer a helping hand as well. And when you end up having a wreck like that close to the finish, it basically comes down to all the damaged cars just trying to creep their way to the start-finish line to pick up whatever spot they possibly can crossing the line for the checkers.
Yeah, it's basically a Boehner race of demolition derby cars, just kind of limping the way back across the start-finish line. And watching that replay once again, one car came flying through there. Unfortunately for him, he was caught a lap down. As I mentioned that last restart, our reigning champion David Duran just came flying to the middle of the incident and somehow, some way, managed to miss the entire field. And it's truly a shame that he was a lap down there. I believe he would have gotten about a 6th or 7th place finish coming across the start-finish line. But definitely wild things for our reigning champion here just a handful of weeks ago.
Ryan Hesgard is going to take the checkered flag in the first race of the second season of the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series. Edwards in 2nd. We gave you the top 5. Shane Tyrion is going to finish in 6th. How about Justin Durand? He had the hardships of his brother David here tonight, but Justin able to get a top 10 run in 7th. Casey Brunson and Austin Grover, those are a couple of guys that had to overcome some early issues. They get top 10 runs here tonight, and Jason Shuey is going to complete the top 10 here this evening. And then you go down from 11th place on back. These are all drivers that are going to be looking towards iRacing Superspeedway next week to try and bounce back from a rather dismal performance here tonight at Daytona.
Definitely not the way we want to start your season off, but luckily for them, they still got 6 races to go in the rest of the season, and we've seen this points system. It's definitely pretty easy to make some lost ground with some pretty wild points values that can kind of come your way if you just kind of hit your stride.
And it looks like we've had this happen a couple of times last season. It looks like the 10 bonus points for improving your position from your initial starting spot, it's going to be split 3 ways here tonight as Vincent Valvano, Austin Grover, and Jason Shuey all finished 12 positions higher than where they rolled off on the starting grid. So 10 bonus points for all 3 of those drivers heading into next week's race. But let's see if we can go down and talk with some of our top 3 finishers from tonight. See if we can kick things off with tonight's third place running, Alonso Chicano. Hey, Alonso, it's Lucas and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys. How you doing?
And I'll tell you what, it's always a clean slate in a season opener. Everybody gunning for that first W on the year. And we saw this race pretty much take on a rather calm look with some green flag pit stops in the early stages. We knew that was going to be too good to last. Crazy restarts at the end, including that overtime green-white checkered. But what was it like inside that 95 car? Because we saw that you were kind of in the middle of the double and three wide action pretty much the entirety of the evening.
Yeah, I mean, started out relatively your typical Daytona race. I don't know what happened with me bumping into Mike and just got him loose or something, and that caused a huge wreck. But after that, I was relatively just kind of hanging out in the back of the pack, and no cautions came out, so we pitted. Fine with that until caution came out. Late caution came out. And the two was, I don't know. He was doing something. He was planning on doing something weird on the restart. I know that because he was hanging back so far back from the pace car. So once they called him out on that, then I knew he was probably gonna go early. So I was just making sure to get a good start, which I feel like I did. I was able to stay side by side with him. It seems like everyone's just favoring the inside, so I was glad I was able to hang on there and not get freight trained by the inside line and be in front of a late wreck that seems to always happen in these races, and came out with the top three. So happy about that.
Obviously, you mentioned there, coming out of the top three position there in a podium, which is obviously an awesome result to kind of start your season off here. We were talking about earlier about a lot of the guys who fortunately just were not able to find their way into victory lane. You being one of them, ran up front, all consistent last year, and unfortunately here tonight, the nuances of plate racing is you go and control so much, and the rest of the field behind you kind of dictates potentially your finishing position. And obviously, you did everything you needed to do there leading up to that white flag. But just talk about getting the push on the back straight away, and unfortunately seeing the rest of the field kind of wrecking behind you in your mirror, working with those other two teammates that were kind of helping each other out towards the front. Just talk about the kind of emotions you have seeing that in your mirror, what kind of goes through your mind, trying to set yourself up to come across the start finish line and still try to pass you guys for the win.
Well, I mean, you're always happy to see the wreck happen behind you, not in front of you. So I was definitely that was a sigh of relief. Once you see a big wreck, and it's gonna come down to three or four of you guys, but I knew those guys were teammates, so it was gonna be hard to pass them. And they did what they needed to do and stick together. As if I was waiting for the second place car to move up high, and then I was gonna be able to get a run. And I was definitely gonna try to use the bottom like I did, but just with those two staying together like that, there was nothing I could do because, um, when you have teammates like that working together, it's hard to beat.
One of the talking points coming into tonight's season opener, Alonso, was last year's season opener saw 11 drivers take the green flag. Here tonight, we double the field size. So does that make a difference in your strategy going in with the field size multiplying by two, more drivers to be able to work with, more drivers to have to work your way around and pass?
Well, uh, something like that really. It's, more cars just mean sometimes, most of the time, bigger wrecks. Sure enough, we had some big wrecks today, and I had to use my fast repair a lot earlier than I would have liked. But you kind of go into these races, it's kind of win or go home. Like, um, if I'm not gonna win or I'm not gonna get a good finish, then I might just end up wrecked, and that's okay. That's just plate racing. But well, definitely it makes it a lot bigger of a challenge. Having over 20 people compared to just 11. I had fun when it was just 11 because it's the racing. It's competitive. It's only a few guys, so You kind of just have small little battle about who can lead the most laps. But when it's a big pack like this, you have to be a lot more careful. And like I said, once I used up my faster pair, I knew I wasn't gonna be running up, trying to make all these crazy moves like I was maybe at the start of the race.
Well, still a great way to start out the season here. Alonso with a third place run. Going to have you up there inside of the top 5 in the point stands heading into iRacing Super Speedway next week as well, where hopefully we'll be able to see you maybe break that winless streak and finally get into victory lane. But now we're going to give the mic over to you and let you thank some sponsors and do some shout outs.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone at Racing, my teammates, my owners, all my sponsors, Celsius, Grid Network, and the Pits News. I got a great group of guys over there, and I always like to thank the broadcasters for broadcasting, so I can show my friends and family what I do, and I know a lot of other races do the same. So thank you guys as well.
That's Alonso Chicano. He gets the second season of the TNR Sunday Super Speedway Series. Started off with a third place run here tonight at Daytona. Congratulations once again, Alonso, and best of luck next week at iRacing Super Speedway.
Thank you guys.
Let's go down and talk with our debuting Bill Edwards, who brings it home tonight in the runner-up position. Hey, Bill, it's Lucas and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yes, sir.
Well, man, I mean, we're mostly used to seeing you wheel a stadium super truck around a dirt track or a street course, but man, apparently you can wheel it around a super speedway as well. Second place here tonight in your debut, and we saw that you, as well as Hesgard and it looked like Tellier, had a strategy coming in the second half of this race. It worked out for you guys, but I mean, how difficult was it when you knew that everybody else was on a different agenda with that final green-white checkered?
Oh, we were already talking about it. Mike, we were talking about possibly doing it because we thought we might be as fast or maybe a little bit faster than the pack. But we were actually having the discussion that if we had a third guy, then we'd be sitting pretty. But and Mike popped in. He's like, "Hey, you guys want to do a strategy?" And we're like, "Oh, okay, this is perfect." So it was meant to be. Unfortunately, Mike didn't get to enjoy the fruits of the labor, but he was right there along with us, and glad to have him as part of the group right there.
Obviously, coming across the start finish line there after that restart on the green with checkered, pushing your teammate Ryan Hesgard there, just continuously working together. After that huge incident right there, coming on the back straightaway and into 3 and 4, the thought crossed your mind at all, but trying to pull out the pass your teammate there coming across the start finish line, or were you just kind of locked in and just committed to push him to the victory?
I guess the thought did cross my mind. The plan was if we could get a good enough lead, and I kind of botched the restart a little bit. I fell back. I was a little bit short on the throttle, so I just didn't get a good enough lead to give it like a nice 2-3 wide at the end there. But that was the plan. If we could have pushed out in front, we were going to go for it.
We saw a lot of different drivers and a lot of different agendas, not only at the end of this race, but at the beginning of this race as well. A lot of drivers falling to the back, trying to find a safe place to ride, but a couple of big wrecks in the first and second half of this race. I mean, how difficult was it trying to predict where those wrecks were going to be, position yourself to make sure you weren't going to be around those wrecks and have to use a faster pair early?
It was tough. I could see that they were, there's a lot of shuffling, some blocking going on early on. That's why we kind of fell towards the back a little bit, and we just tried to ride, and we were hoping that pit strategy would pay off, and it worked out.
Bill, congratulations on a second place performance in your debut here in the TNR Sunday Super Speedway Series. Hopefully we can see you carry this momentum into next week, maybe put that 50 car in victory lane at iRacing Super Speedway. But for now, we're going to give you the opportunity here to thank some sponsors and do some shout outs.
Got to give a shout out to Ryan for coming back here. He's been gone for a little bit, and everybody should give him a nice congratulations. He just had a baby not too long ago. Not him, the significant other had the baby. I got to give a shout out to Mike because I don't know if we would have been there had Mike not, grouped up with us and helped with that third car. So that was perfect. FRN, you guys up in the booth, Polyhedral Cathedral, Sim Shots, Thornton Graphics, Nipa Cornhole, Dunn Raceway Park, Intoxicated Gaming, and all the people that put this fun stuff together. Let us come over here and have a good, a little white knuckle racing on a Sunday night.
That's Bill Edwards, runner-up
Oh.
finisher here tonight. Oh,
I got to say hi to my mom and my girlfriend.
there you go. That's Bill Edwards. He's your runner-up finisher here tonight in the Matt Muir Designs 150 at Daytona. Congratulations once again, Bill. Best of luck next week at the first trip to iRacing Superspeedway.
Sounds good. Can't wait.
And let's go down to victory lane. First start, first victory in the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series for Ryan Hesgard, one of 5 drivers that still had his faster pair intact when the checkered flag waved. Ryan, Lucas, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got a copy?
Howdy.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what a performance for you here tonight. Started up in the 4th position, kind of faded towards the back near the middle portion of this race, but up front when it mattered the most. One big question we had, though, based off of seeing you kind of back out of the throttle a little bit there through 3 and 4 was how close was the fuel? Because we know that you and a couple of others came down pit road around what we thought was the projected fuel window to make it to the end. Then we have that overtime green-white checkered coming up. Did you have enough fuel to make it to the end? Was that a concern?
It was at like in that middle section before we got that caution, but as soon as we got the caution, I'd like to tell you I was on fumes, but I had 12 laps, I think. So I think fuel was all right. But we were trying to play that mind game, though, a little bit. I know I was laying back on that pace car a little bit. I'm just so used to clutching it and riding it right at like 78, 79. I got a little farther than I wanted to. They called me out on it. No harm, no foul. You don't really get an advantage here. As soon as that pace car crosses a cone, it's green flag. So, that was, rookie mistake, but that won't happen again. But yeah, no, fuel was good. We were fine. We knew we were talking about it. We took a few extra gallons anticipating us just riding the 3 of us. Then we got fortunate that we had, I forget who it was, but we picked up 2 guys, and then we had another car that we passed. So we saved a little bit with those guys.
You mentioned a rookie mistake there. Obviously, jumping into the TNR Super Series here tonight with your teammate Bill Edwards, and both having your debut here tonight at Daytona and coming across with a 1-2 finish. Obviously, these guys have a whole season in the books and a lot of experience kind of racing each other. A pretty large field here tonight. Can you just kind of describe what you were thinking heading into this race, and obviously pulling off a pretty crazy strategy that kind of got you guys up front and in contention to race to win, and obviously pulled it off. Just talk about kind of joining a group of guys like this who've already kind of done it all last season, and then jumping in here and kind of topping the best of them here tonight.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't want to sound arrogant or anything like that, but I don't worry a whole lot about the competition, regardless of who it is. We put the time as a team. I can't tell you how many hours Bill and I have just bump drafted. So I'm extremely comfortable when I'm in front of him or vice versa. And it doesn't at these type of tracks. It doesn't matter. You can get just the slightest wrong bump and you're in calamity corner. So the competition part of it, I don't worry about too much on super speedways. Now, if we were at a full season or something, then you're doing some investigating. But on these things, I mean, it's you roll the dice. You don't know what's going to happen. So.
Ryan, we've talked about, how unorthodox the point system is here for this series. A lot of emphasis on running up at the front and finishing up at the front. And we know that super speedways are very unpredictable. But with it being now only a 7-race schedule as opposed to the 9 races back in season 1, is it too early for you and your team to start formulating a plan to try and gun for that championship? Because we ended up seeing the defending champion, David Duran, go to victory lane a total of 2 times last season. And already you've got a trip to victory lane on your resume here to start out season 2.
Well, I mean, the goal is always a championship in any league that we run in. I haven't run a super speedway league per se. I have run full season ones, full race leagues. If we were running something like that, I don't know if I'd be gunning for a championship just because I know what the time and the preparation that it takes. But on these things, like I said earlier, it's such a crapshoot. I mean, if we would have had a caution right away after we pitted, our whole strategy was thrown out the window. And we're it's pure chance at these things, and that's what we like about it. I mean, it can riding in the back. That's pure strategy for us. We're so used to running without a fast repair that you got to be conservative at the beginning. So I think we're probably going to stick with our same strategy. It works for us. The goal is not necessarily to win, but definitely top 10 for sure. So I think we're going to stick with that for now.
Ryan, a great way to get your TNR Sunday Super Speedway Series career off with a victory here tonight at Daytona in the season opener. Congratulations. And now we're going to hand the mic over to you for some victory lane thank you, sponsors, and shoutouts.
Yeah, as Bill mentioned, I was listening to him. I've been on like a 1.5 year hiatus. Oculus wasn't working, and I didn't want to run with 3 monitors. So I had taken a lot of time off, over a year. This is actually my second race back total. So it feels good. Once I seen the Xfinity car, I was like, I'm going to apply to this Super Speedway League, and that's good. So, big thanks to Bill for, supporting me with just having a baby and all that stuff. And then just getting me back into iRacing. So thank you to him. Thank you to you guys, FRN, for the sponsorship and, well, the broadcast anyway. Adds that extra aspect to the league that, quite a few people enjoy. So thank you. Polythedral Cathedral, Sim Shots, Thornton Graphics, Nipa Cornhole, Dunn Raceway Park, Intoxicated Gaming, and then last but not least, our race team. Without those guys, we're not even on here. So I'll leave you all with that, and I appreciate the interview.
Well, the second season opener for the TNR Super Speedway Series belongs to Ryan Hescard here tonight at Daytona. Congratulations once again. Best of luck next week to maybe go 2 for 2 to start out the season at iRacing Super Speedway.
Hey, thanks, guys.
And that's going to finish off tonight's Daytona race in the Matt Muir Designs 150. We ended up hearing Bill Edwards kind of say typical Daytona race, early portions, everybody just kind of trying to mind their P's and Q's. We actually got to see a cycle of green flag pit stops, which was an anomaly last year. We had to wait till the season finale to get to see the first green flag pit stop cycle in that one. And then it all kind of seemed to be your typical end of a super speedway race. The late cautions, the late restarts, everybody gunning for that checkered flag.
Yeah, most definitely, and unfortunately, another huge incident right there on the last lap, as you usually expect to happen, with everybody kind of bunched up together, going for everything. But yeah, definitely a lot of storylines continue to follow. These two guys jumping in the series and winning and finishing 1-2 as teammates in the season opener, and their debut in the series is obviously very impressive, and they it's interesting to see how they continue to carry the rest of the season and see if they can just hold in the championship positions, and then the rest of the field behind them. Will they try to maybe team up and work together a little bit more to try to separate them two from being able to just kind of get up front and dominate like they did at the end of that race there?
Here tonight, they had a plan going in. They kind of formulated another strategy midway, and it ended up paying off at the end. Here at Daytona, though, it's a little bit more congested. You can take it 4 wide, but we saw even a 4 wide move led to some contact and eventually a caution. So about 3 wide is how you want to push it. Next week, we go to iRacing Super Speedway. Third time that it's going to be run here in this series. First time this season. About 5-6 lanes available to these drivers, and we've seen them even use another 2 lanes below the double yellow line. So the strategy worked tonight. Maybe not going to be able to use that same strategy next week because there's a lot of space to work with.
Yeah, the strategy for iRacing the Super Speedway is don't let your foot off the gas, pretty much. That place is absolutely insane, obviously, being a new addition to the iRacing service last year, and these Super Speedway guys definitely have a huge change of pace going from Daytona all over that 3-mile Super Speedway next week.
A lot of drivers will look to continue their momentum from the good performances tonight at Daytona. A lot of other drivers will be looking to get their mojo back after some disappointing runs in tonight's season opener. iRacing Superspeedway next on tap for these drivers next Sunday night, with the green flag scheduled to fly at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Lucas, it's been a great one here tonight to start out the second season of the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series. Appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Absolutely, Seth. Always a pleasure.
Thanks to everyone that tuned in tonight. Hope to see you guys next week as we continue on the schedule for the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series. Ryan Hesgard is your winner here tonight in the Matt Muir Designs 150. For Lucas Cram, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, folks, as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.